Good morning. Today is Tuesday, the 20th day of Cheshvan. Tuesday, the 20th day of Cheshvan. The 20th day of Cheshvan is a special day, the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe. Was born in 1860. And the Rebbe Rashab, actually, one of the things we're going to learn in today's Tanya is something that the Rebbe Rashab gives very deep explanations. He was called, they referred to him as the Rambam of the Hasidus. Just like the Rambam, the Maimonides he wrote the book, the Mishnah Torah, covering the whole entire Torah, all of the mitzvahs, explaining it very well, in a very systematic way. The Rebbe Rashab also took the Hasidus, the deepest concepts, and he wrote the Ma'amorim, the discourses that he said, very long and deep Ma'amorim, and building the structure of the Hasidus in a very systematic way to understand the depths of the most mystical Kabbalistic concepts. So we are holding in Tanya, in the middle of chapter 29 in Igeret Hakodesh, the 29th letter. And in this, to give briefly what we're talking about in this letter, the Alter Rebbe discusses the concept of the importance of the halacha in the Torah, and that this is called the keser, the crown of the Torah. In order to explain this, Alter Rebbe started explaining what the Arizal says about the idea of the reincarnations, why people come down into this world again and again, that every neshama needs to perform all of the 613 mitzvahs. And that is why we come again and again into this world, not only to correct something that was not done well in the previous life, which is of course also a reason to come down again in this world, but also in order to be able to fulfill all of the mitzvahs, because there's no one person that is able to fulfill all the mitzvahs. As I said yesterday, for example, a Kohen cannot perform certain mitzvahs, or some person who is not a Kohen cannot perform the mitzvahs that a Kohen has to perform. And this is why the neshama has to come down again and again to this world in order to perform all the mitzvahs. And the question is why? Why do we need all the mitzvahs? Why is it not enough? Let's say there's 630 mitzvahs. Oh, okay, I do 100 mitzvahs. Isn't that enough to get good energy and godly light from the 100 mitzvahs? 200 mitzvahs, 300 mitzvahs. We know even one mitzvah has a tremendous power. So the Alter Rebbe explained, brings from the Arizal, that what does the mitzvahs do? The mitzvahs create garments to the soul. And this soul is able to enjoy and to have delight in the godly delight only through those mitzvahs. So there are garments, each mitzvah is a garment to a particular part of the neshama to be able to benefit from the light of Hashem. And why does the neshama needs a garment? Because the light of the neshama, the light of the pleasure, of the delight in Hashem is so powerful and so intense that there is no way for the soul to connect to it without being uh, completely nullified. It's impossible for the neshama to receive because no matter how much the godly light is being reduced, it is still godly and is still infinite, and the neshama being that the neshama is a created being from Hashem. After the soul comes down, of course, it originates in the very essence of Hashem, but it brings down, Hashem brings it down and creates the neshama. So now the neshama is not able to connect to the godly revelation unless it has something which serves like an intermediary between the light of Hashem, the endless light of Hashem, and the neshama. And that is the garment. And the only one that is able to create this garment and to create a garment that allows the neshama to enjoy the benefit of the godly light is God himself. That is not limited in any of these limitations. So this is what the Alter Rebbe, what we explained yesterday. And the Alter Rebbe continues today to explain about what does it mean that the soul receives the garment. What exactly is this garment? So he's going to explain that there is the idea of there is the will and there is the delight. Rotzain and Tainug. When we're talking about the delight, the Tainug, the pleasure, the joy, this is something what the Rebbe Rashab speaks in length. Tavrish Samach Vav, in the book that he explains in depth and length, which one is a deeper power of the soul? Is it the light or the will? What do I mean? We know the faculties of the person. You have the actions, you have the emotions, you have the intellect, and there is the deeper faculties, which is the will. When there's the will is a way. The willpower is a very strong power. When you want something, who wants? It comes from the neshama itself, or the soul itself wants something. And then so that is called a koyach makif, a power which is an encompassing power. Then there is another koyach, another power of the soul, which is the oineg, the delight, the pleasure. The pleasure also, the delight is also something which is more than, it's something deeper in the soul. So there is a whole lengthy discussion that the Rebbe Rashab discusses and to say which one of them is deeper in the soul, which one of them is stronger. Is it the delight or the willpower? So for example, when you take something, let's say you take something, something you eat something because you enjoy it, you have pleasure, so so you go and you eat something, whatever gives you pleasure. Sometimes there is there's a will to take something which is not so tasty. You're taking a medication, a medicine that doesn't taste good. So if you don't have pleasure in it, you wouldn't take it. But but you take it, the power of will that you want to take this, even though there is no pleasure in it. Why is it? Because you understand that this is good for you. So the Rebbe Rashab goes back and forth which one is deeper into which one is considered stronger, which is the source of the other. Ultimately, he gets to the conclusion that the strongest power and the deepest power in the person is the power of the oineg, the pleasure, the delight. At the end of the day, the rotz and the will is something which the person is drawn to something outside of him. But when talking about the pleasure, the delight is you have the delight in you. So, what is it connected with what we're saying today? Alter Rebbe is going to explain now that the enjoyment, the delight in God that comes when the person goes in Gan Eden and has this delight in God. This is the deepest level, the highest level. In order to be able to enjoy this delight, Hashem gave to us something from His will. The will is like an external part of the delight. And what is the will? This is the mitzvahs. Being that the mitzvahs, the commandments, is God's will, so when we connect to the will of God, we connect with the external part, so to speak, of the essence, and thereby this creates the garment for the soul that enables the person to receive the deeper part, which is the oineg, the delight. So let's look inside, and we'll get smarter, and we'll learn from the Alter Rebbe's words. Just a second. There we are. Says the Alter Rebbe, והנה, אויר זה, הגונוז לצדיקים לעוsid לבוי, הנקרא בשם נוים Hashem. Now this delight that is hidden away for the righteous, for the time to come, after we go to the next world, that is termed as above the pleasantness of God, Noyam Hashem, Vetzachtzachos, and the pleasurable thirst. Tzachtzachos is the thirst for godliness. Leis Anegal Hashem, of delighting in God. And he brings another reference to it, and it says, Vedaled meois almin dechsufim the misangem bo'in tzadikaya, and also the 400 worlds of longing in which the tzaddikim delight, as it is written, the 400 shkalim of silver, kesef. This is actually from this week's Torah portion. It says over there about Avraham, it says, Vayishkel Avram le'Ephraim, es ha-kesef, 400 shekel kesef eivel ha-seicher. That Avraham, when he bought the Ma'oras HaMachpelah, the cave, and the burial place for Sarah, he bought it from Ephraim, and he gave him 400 silver shkalim. Eivel ha-seicher. And so the Zohar explains that this story with what Avram weighs, the shekel, it is 400 shkalim. It's all spiritual things, besides the actual, the literal thing what took place. It's a reference to more spiritual things. And it says 400 shekel kesef represents the 400 worlds of delight in God, and he calls it kesef. Kesef is from the world. The kesef means money, means silver. Kesef also comes from the word kesufim, like it's yearning and longing. Those are the 400 different levels that tzaddikim have. And the Rebbe explains in another place, it says also that Yishkel Avram le'Ephraim. Avram gave it to Ephraim. Ephraim comes from the word afar, which means dust. And that is, it says, what it means that the way, the vessel to be able to receive this godly light is when you get the level of Ephron, you get the level of dust, meaning completely being nullified to Hashem. And Avram has this because Avram says, "V'noichi ofa ve'efa." He said, "I am like dust and ashes." He was in a level of nullified to Hashem. So he gives this 400 shekel kesef. This 400 shekels. So this is the meaning of the levels, the light of that is for the tzaddikim, which every Jew is able to reach that level. And this is an endless level of endless delight in Hashem. In a yesh bo mailes madregois rabbis me'oid gavoya me'al gavoya. This light comprises very many rungs level, one superior to the other, endless level. You reach one level, there is always something higher, higher and higher. Now, how do you get to be able to enjoy this type of spiritual light? In order to be able to enjoy it, you need to have a garment that gives you the strength to be able to contain this light. And what is the garment? Is a more reduced light from that light itself. And it says, but the minute radiance which descends level after level to create this garment that garbs the soul belongs to the lowest level of this light. What is the lowest level of this light? This, metaphorically speaking, is referred to as the external level, or achoraim. As stated in the Zoya, and also the commentary entitled Mikdash Melech, and that which is left, meaning that the light, which is the source of the garment, is the most external and hindmost level. And the Alter Rebbe is going to give an example from the human condition. So it gives an example, Kemoi Shebenishmas Adam. A human condition, we have the pleasure. What is the pleasure that a person has? What brings a person pleasure? There's obviously different levels of pleasure. Some people have pleasure from a nice piece of steak. Other people have pleasure from they listen to some nice classical music. Some music can give them pleasure. What is the highest level of pleasure that a human being can achieve? The highest level form of pleasure is pleasure in an intellectual pleasure. When a person understands a concept deeply, it brings him pleasure. And that is it's a more refined pleasure. Where is the pleasure revealed? In the intellect, through the intellect. In the intellect itself, as we explained many times, there is the Chachma and there is the Bina. Chachma is like the flash, understanding the first spark of the idea. But there is a pleasure there, but it's not fully there because when you have the idea, you still don't have it. Then there is what's called the Bina. Bina is the understanding. When you take this idea and you develop it and you start breaking it down to different parts and understanding from every side and really comprehending this idea, that's called Bina. And there the pleasure is revealed. And that is why the Alter Rebbe says the Olam Haba, the future world, the world to come, is called the world of Bina, world of understanding, because that's when the pleasure in understanding, in the delight of godliness. So he brings the example, just like the soul of man, there is a faculty for the pleasure. The soul takes pleasure in what it finds pleasurable. Kamoi, for example, as in the conception of a new insight or the like. Now, ubchinas chitzonius v'acharaim shel koyach ubchinas atainuk shabo ubchinas harotzen shabo. Now, the external and the hindmost aspect of the soul's power of the and the state of the light is the faculty of will. Shu roitze ma shu roitze. Dainu davar she'eino tzar she'atzar epech atainuk. That it wants that what you wills, meaning something that does not pain, that is not painful, because pain is the opposite of delight. So what is he saying? You have the delight is the biggest pleasure, and what is the will is the next level. The external part of the delight is the will, because you want something that gives you pleasure. So if you ask a person, what is the greatest power of the person? The power of will is very strong. But where does the will come from? The will comes from the pleasure. When there is a pleasure in something, even if it's subconscious, then there is the will to do it. So the will is the external part of the pleasure. Metaphorically speaking, it's the same with the infinite Ein Sof light, as it were. So the supernal will is the external and the hindmost aspect of the supernal delight. The pleasantness of God. Is the pleasurable thirst. And the worlds of longing, and is mentioned above, the 400 worlds. Now, although, says the Alter Rebbe continues and gives and explains that you cannot compare completely human pleasure and human will to godly pleasure, because by God, it's all one, it's all united, you cannot separate. Nevertheless, we're using human terms to understand something of the way Hashem functions with the will, that the will of Hashem, which is the mitzvahs, creates a vessel, which is the external part of the pleasure, creates a vessel for the neshama to be able to get to the pleasure. Agam, that's what Alter Rebbe continues and it says, Agam she'em yuchodim etachlis hayichud, though these supernal delight and the supernal will are fused in absolute unity. Shehu is Baruch v'ratzayin echad, because God and His will are one. V'lo k'ratzayin adam chas v'shalom, and it's not heaven forfend like the will of man. Lo minei v'lo miktsasei, neither wholly and nor partially. It doesn't have anything to do with human pleasure and human will. Vein dimyan b'neim klal. There being no similarity whatsoever between them. But nevertheless, afal pikein dibra Torah keloshoinu b'nei Adam. The Torah nevertheless speaks in the human idiom. L'shakei ha'oizen ma sheyechola lishmoya b'moshel v'melitza minishmas ha'adam, in order to modulate for the ear what it is able to hear with allegory and metaphor relating to the soul of man. The soul of man is compounds the faculty of delight, will, wisdom, understanding, and so on. And that is in that order. So you have the delight by the person, you have the wisdom, the will of the person, leads to the wisdom, understanding, and so on. וכנראה בחוש שכשאדם משכיל איזה שכל חדש נפלא, And this is evident, we can actually see it, that when a person conceives some wonderful new insight, azai be'oisei rega, al kalponim noilag loi, tainug nifla besichtloi. So at that moment, at least, a wondrous delight is born in his mind. Gets a pleasure. Oh, I got an idea. And it brings joy. Michlal, she'atainug ulemaila maila b'chinas ha'seichel v'chachma. Thus it follows that the capacity for pleasure surpasses by far the faculty of intellect and wisdom. It is merely vested in the faculty of the intellect and wisdom. Because if you're using the wisdom and you think and you got the understanding and that brings you the pleasure, that means that the pleasure is there. And it is revealed through the wisdom. Thus, when a man feels a subject of intellect and wisdom, the hainu, which means shemasigo mavina heitev, that is, he apprehends and understands it well. He then also senses the faculty of pleasure, which is vested in the subject of wisdom. This is why in the sacred Zohar, the faculty of Bina is referred to as the world to come. The faculty of Bina means the understanding, is referred to as the world to come, because in the world to come, the neshamas receive the Bina, the understanding in the greatest levels of the delight of Hashem. For it is the state of manifestation of Chachma together with the delight vested in it. So you have the Chachma, wisdom. In the Chachma you have vested the delight. And by Bina, it becomes revealed. So the Chachma is revealed along with the delight that is vested in the Chachma. Shemasigim atzadikim began Eden umaskilim bepnimiyus haTorah, which the righteous in the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, they apprehend and conceive new insights in the pnimius, in the innermost mystical dimensions of the Torah. The Raisa mechachma nafka, because the Torah derives from Chachma. V'iraisa v'kutchabrichu kol echad, and the Torah and the Holy One, blessed be He, are entirely one. So this gives us the understanding why the Torah, and the mitzvahs, they become the garments. That this is because this is the will of Hashem, and this enables the soul to hold on to the will, to the godly delight through the fulfilling these physical mitzvahs, and therefore, and the same thing is also with the Torah, the learning of the Torah, and the Alter Rebbe will continue in tomorrow's lesson to explain this. That the Torah is also, it is being that this is the wisdom of Hashem in there. It is one, and it is one with Hashem. So all of this gives us the explanation of why we should be connected with all of the mitzvahs, and why we should be connected in all of the Torah. And as the Rebbe explains also, that this explains that the importance also to learn not only the external part of the Torah, the revealed part of the Torah, but also the mystical part, the way it is explained Baruch Hashem today through the Chassidus that we are learning today, like learning the Tanya and other books of Chassidus, because this gives us a whole new understanding and appreciation in the godly revelation. So this is the end of today's shir. It's a little long one, but takes us a new step closer to the understanding this deep concept of this chapter. And we'll continue tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem, You should all have a wonderful day. Any questions we can take now?